Hi Joe, how are you?
Very well. How you doing, Andy?
Yeah, I'm good. Lee can't make it tonight, unfortunately.
No, we are a man down. I think he's given us an excuse of sorts. I don't know whether we should accept it or not.
Well, I think we have to. I think he's had a long day taking a 992 Turbo S back to Reading.
It's a tough day, that, isn't it?
Oh, it's awful, isn't it? I think he drove it all the way over to Germany and back. So yeah. I think he's a little bit weary. Poor thing.
I think wasn't there almost a sort of 200 mile an hour on the Autobahn, possibly.
Yeah,
unconfirmed.
Yeah, definitely on the Autobahn, nowhere else.
No, indeed. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll let him make his apologies next pod round.
Indeed.
But for tonight, we're chatting to the very interesting Sam Moores, aren't we?
Yeah, I think it'd be good. Sam's been around for a few years and on the scene, as it were, in amongst all the big YouTube names and stuff. So it'd be quite interesting to find out who Sam is, because I don't fully know. So I think people should be interested.
Yeah, I think there's definitely there's some strong Porsche connections, which is good. I think there's a F40 thrown in there for fun, isn't there?
There is, yeah, which I believe there's a bit of a backstory on.
Okay.
It's quite a famous car. So
we'll dive into that then for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So should we bring him on and see what his story is?
Let's do it.
Hello, Sam. How are you?
Very good. How are you? Good.
Thanks for joining us. Sorry for sort of a couple of technical issues. We've lost Lee tonight. He's on the motorway somewhere. Went up to Reading today to drop a Turbo S off after doing a big trip to Germany. And I think he's worn himself out. So it's just myself and Joe with you tonight.
Could be worse.
We're not actually the consolation prize. It's just,
Yeah.
I haven't driven any of the 992s yet. Have you?
You have, haven't you, Joe?
Yeah. So the 992, just 4S, which was good. I mean, So I drove one a while ago, and it very, very first came out, and was a bit not really taken by it. It felt a bit like a Panamera to me. It was just big. And then drove one again recently, and was much more into it. So I think there's good things to come with those, I think.
Yeah, we're waiting with bated breath to see what Lee says about the Turbo S.
I hear
he did
good and bad things. Like,
have you?
Nothing bad, in the sense that it sounds like it's really good.
Yeah,
but it's just a 911 turbo. So it's incredibly fast. This one sounds like it's way more involved. Everyone that I know that's driven one says it's way more involving than the previous ones. It feels like a GT car rather than necessarily a turbo as previously. But it can do whatever, 0 to very, very fast in no time. And where do you do that?
I think it'll be interesting to hear what Lee's, because he's had was driven all the way to Stuttgart and back in it, with a 959 behind him.
Nice.
On the way back. So I think they did a bit of swapsies as well. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what he thinks of it, and also in relation to something that's 30 years old. I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, similar format but fast forwarded 30.
Yeah, pretty nuts.
So Sam, I was keen to sort of kick off and find out a bit more about you. Obviously, you're into a bit of photography stuff. What came first for you? Was it cars? Was it photography? Was it YouTube? What sort of, which order of events happened for you in which way?
It's a good question. Cars are quite far down the line for me. I've sort of always kind of liked cars as like a kid. You're like, oh, that looks like a fast car. That's a Porsche. That's Ferrari. But it was nothing much more than that. And my family didn't really have any fast cars or anything. Actually, that's not strictly true. My dad had a 911 at one point. He had a
good choice.
Yeah. I can't believe I don't know this. He had a 964 Targa.
Nice.
Or was it 993? I should know this. I did my research, but it was around for like not very long and then disappeared. But so I wasn't massively into the techie side or very knowledgeable or into racing or anything like that. And then one of my school friends was a guy called Tim Burton, who you might know as Shmee 150.
Yeah.
I met him when I was 12 or 13, I guess.
Yeah.
And we sort of hung out quite a lot every now and then. And I went off to uni to study engineering. I was one of those sort of mathsy, physicsy, designy type people.
Yeah.
And then Tim went off to Imperial to study computer science. Unknown fact for most people probably. And then he started filming cars in London. And I'd occasionally be like, oh, Sam, I'm going to this event. And at this point in time, I started getting a bit more interested in cars. I didn't start driving until I was 22. So super late. A product of living in a city and never needing to drive a car, and also not necessarily having much desire really to get a car. But we started going to these events and Tim would film them. And I'd sort of picked up photography along the way as something that I kind of liked. Never took that seriously. Did that sort of a bit throughout uni. We were both of us very, very much into skiing. We were both ski instructors actually. We used to spend a lot of time in the Alps skiing and then also taking photos, or I'd get good at taking photos and then end up with really crap photos of me.
Always the way.
Which is always the way, and is the way till today, and until you hang out with other people that are good at taking photos. But I started going to all of these sort of car events and stuff like that, taking photos. Tim would film some videos, I'd take some photos, and it's sort of just gone from there, really. I would say my biggest sort of break in car photography, or when it really started to get going, was another school friend, a girl called Fleur, was working as an intern at Gumball 3000.
Okay.
She messaged me one day. We were sort of friends, but not really friends. And was like, oh, we get all of these old men coming on the rally to take photos. Do you fancy coming on our rally to take photos? Because you're not old.
Did she see you as an old man? No. Do you want it more of the same or something different?
More of the same. No, I think she's like, I know we get on and I have to hang around with these photographers, so why don't you come along? And so I went along to my first Gumball 3000. It was 2012, which was across America. And in that sort of job situation, you're jumping in vans and hanging out of windows and just sort of doing a lot of miles in a week. Sounds like this crazily extravagant thing, and it's fun, but it's like you're just flat out. Like if you're taking photos or filming or doing a combination of all of the above on a trip like that, it looks like this crazy thing, but 3,000 miles in a week is a lot of miles.
Yeah.
And it means you're driving sort of 12, especially when you're in groups, because you go so much slower.
Yeah.
Some idiot doesn't fill up their tank when you stop.
Yeah.
So you might have like 14 hours on the road, of which you're taking photos all the time. And then you take photos at the beginning, take photos at night, then you've got to edit. And you probably pop to a club for like half an hour, go to sleep, get up again like 4 hours later and repeat that. But it was an amazing sort of baptism of fire on shooting more. I'd been shooting a reasonable amount of car stuff by then, but working fast and with what you've sort of the situations that you get thrown into, so you don't have much control. And the best thing,
tell us about the myth of the Gumball. I mean, is that as crazy and party centric as everyone makes out? Is it a wild affair?
For some people. So I would say most of the people that do Gumball, if you just look at the price of entry, sort of sums up kind of who's going to be doing it. So most years, I think, let's say this year was probably, I think it'll cancel this year, but last year, I think was 50 grand for one car. So there's not that many people that can afford to spend
Yeah.
50 grand, or would necessarily want to spend that on a week sitting in a car.
Yeah, it's a weird concept for a lot of
you
people.
stay at like kind of okay hotels. Like they're nice, but they're not like crazy.
Not 50 grand nice.
They're definitely not that nice.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of sort of middle-aged, slightly older people that might have just sold a business, or they've always wanted to do it and they do it with their kid, or that sort of thing. And then you get just like crazy random people from everywhere, whether it's someone that owns a porn site or something and turns up at P1. Like, these are the sort of people that you meet on Gumball, and it's...
You get a huge cross-section then. It's not...
You do. And
yeah,
I think the best thing about those rallies is definitely not the driving. That is pretty much awful. Like, it's kind of fun, but it's pretty awful. Is the people. And you just meet all of these people from all walks of life. I mean, I've met some people that are like some of my greatest friends through doing the Gumball rallies, and just you would never, like, you just wouldn't meet these people. And everyone has a story of some sort. Like, you don't just turn up and somehow end up on it. Either you've paid or you've been invited, and either way you're kind of interesting in some way, shape or form. And it's just a crazy bunch of people. There's a lot of the mad stuff that you hear about, people driving really fast. The ones that have been sort of have left Europe and gone further east. I did one that ended up in Romania, and as soon as we were sort of crossed borders out of what would be considered, like let's say Europe-ish, the rules seem to sort of go out the window quite a lot. And especially Hungary, I wouldn't necessarily advise it, but they've got some really good roads, like really nice open motorways with no one on for hundreds of miles. And there was I think a lot of people hit some VMAXs in that situation. Jeez. In all of the crazy cars. You've got someone like in an F12 next to an Aventador SV or something at the time, and then someone brings up like a Bugatti along. It's just absolute car porn of the highest level, being driven by some mentalists. And then,
so how old would you have been in 2012 then? Sorry to age you.
That's a good question. I'm going to have to think how old I was. So I was born in 87. So
that makes 25, doesn't it?
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So pretty young. You've actually got a driving license now.
I got a driving license. I've been driving for 3 years.
Yeah.
Which did I get? I'm trying to think which rally I got to drive something on.
So were you just taking photographs in 2012 then, and actually just hanging out of other people's cars and vans and things?
Yeah. As a photographer, you sort of just turned up, and they were like, right, you need to get yourself from here to there. Like, okay, but like, I'll just jump in a car with someone. Like, what do you mean jump in a car? Like, they're all 2-seater sports cars with 2 people in them. So there were definitely times where what you found as a photographer is I would try and make friends with a group. Let's say there might be a group of guys on that America tour. There was this team called Team White, slightly unoriginally named because they had a bunch of white cars. They had a DBS, they had a Bentley Brooklands. That was a really cool thing. And they had something else, a Phantom, a Rolls-Royce Phantom. That was their 3 cars. And because pretty much all of those have back seats to some extent, I realized that if I made friends with them, and they seemed to think I was okay, I could at least guarantee it. I'll be like, okay, whatever you do, guys, I'll be here in the morning, and don't drive off without me. Unless
That's nice.
If I'm going with someone else. You guys need to not leave me in Central America somewhere. So there's a lot of that, like jumping in and out of different cars. I've sort of got lost. I can't remember what the original question was, to be honest.
Well, was that a side gig at that time then? The 2012? Was that like, you'd finished uni and working in engineering, or what's that?
Finished uni. I say finished uni. I actually dropped out after 2 years, well, 3, but 2. And it just, it was all this sort of photography stuff was starting to go on. And I realized that it was just engineering, the idea of sitting in an office doing engineering. And I was starting to go on all these rallies and things and sort of just hanging out with girls, whereas all the engineers, just like a bunch of dudes. And yeah, so I was sort of got to this point where I was sort of bombing around at home a little bit, doing some photography, going on a bunch of these rallies every year, which worked quite well. Great way of meeting people and a great way of meeting other photographers. I think that's really one of the things I've taken. One of the biggest things I've taken out of, let's say, doing Gumball was there would be like 4 or 5 amazing photographers on a rally, and you're in the same situation as them, so you've got no excuse not to deliver the same level as them. Okay, you start off and you can't, but you might be standing next to this guy and he'd just take this unbelievable photo and you're like, oh damn, like I've got no excuses, I was standing next to you. And you're there like, oh, I don't know what happens. So the learning curve as a photographer doing those sorts of things, you learn. I think to anyone that's sort of getting into photography or wants to sort of pursue that sort of thing, I would try and get on some road trips. Generally people will have a photographer on because it's good for everyone really, and you just sort of sit in someone's passenger seat and provide some photos and whatever. But it gives you a real chance to, one, meet a whole bunch of people that could be potential customers, meet a whole bunch of people that are, if it's supercars, they're successful at something, which might be helpful or not helpful down the line. And then you can build up your skills of being quick and efficient at getting good photos. Whereas I think some people would get used to taking a lot of time, and then when you don't have time, they're completely stuffed.
So coming up with a good way of taking photos in quick time and making sure that you get good shit out each time.
And just getting your brain able to function, and especially something like Gumball, you've had about 3 hours sleep, you're possibly hungover, you're possibly drunk, who knows, but like you've still got to deliver all of the stuff you need to deliver. You're obviously not driving at that point in time. So
it's all happening really quickly as well because it's all moving targets, isn't it?
Exactly. So literally everything's running around, and you can't. I remember one of them, which was one of the American. Oh, it was that first one. I had been tasked by a Morgan magazine to take photos of the 3-wheeler. So Charles Morgan was doing the rally in a 3-wheeler across the States, which was quite a feat.
That's harsh.
Yeah, like through Death Valley and stuff at 55 degrees C. It was pretty hardcore. But
how did he keep up? He must have been driving 24 hours.
Well, you can still drive 70 miles an hour in those things.
Yeah, I guess so. But everybody else is like doing 200.
But if you drive fast, you get caught by the police. So it's
got you. Yeah.
It slows you down quite a lot. So I guess you want to drive like slightly quickly, but not that fast. And ultimately, you just need to get there and probably not fill up any too often or hang out with people that are really slow. That's the key, is navigating. People mess with navigation, that's it. Like you're a goner. But I needed to take a photo of this. I was like, okay, cool. We're in Times Square. The Morgan's on the start line. We've got the crowds everywhere. I'm just going to stand in the middle of the road, get shouted at by everyone, and I'm going to get a picture of this car with all the cool background. And that'll be like the cover shot.
The money shot.
Sweet. And I step into the road, and at which point Charles got a bit bored. I was like, oh, I'm just sort of like faffing around a little bit, and then decided that was enough, and he just put his foot down, and I had to like dive out of the way. But yeah, so quite a few years of doing that sort of thing, taking photos, and then at some point in time I started making videos. But videos has always for me been like a bit of a side. It's just like something I do for me because I've either got a chance to do something cool and I want to share it. It's nothing other than that really. A bit more going forward, and then start taking photos for different companies, working with different people. Alongside this, the social media stuff sort of been going on, so you start working with the odd brand here and there on the social media stuff. And then And then, yeah, I guess up to sort of now where I'd always liked the idea of doing a podcast, and I sit and chat to friends about cars like till the end of time. So it's like, well, hang on a minute. I now, because of the photography and doing the rallies and all sorts of things, I've met a lot of people in the industry who are quite interesting. I was like, well, okay, why don't I just start a podcast? I like listening to podcasts. Maybe no one else will like listening to me on a podcast, but try and make a podcast that's about the guests and get good. Because I always listen to people like Joe Rogan and stuff like that, interviewing famous people, and go, I quite like that. I quite like the idea of something like that, of just finding out more about people.
Yeah.
Because there's everyone you meet, and I'm sure you find this, like if you dig deep enough, like everyone's interesting on some level. And I find a lot of people, I get this where, because being a photographer, if I go to like a friend's wedding or something, you sit down and they're like, you're like, oh, what do you do? Like, oh, I'm a photographer. They're like, oh, what do you shoot? Like cars. And for guys, that's like, oh wow, that's pretty interesting. And you're like, oh, what do you do? And they're like, oh, I'm an accountant or something. And
an engineer.
Yeah, or an engineer. Yeah, exactly.
Easy.
But I want to get some interesting stuff out of these other people, because everyone's lives and jobs are interesting if you poke them enough. And generally people are interested in what they're doing. And the more you do something, the more you get interested in it. It's just, I think a lot of people think what they're doing is not interesting to other people, and they don't necessarily want to talk about it. So I always ended up in this situation where people just like asking you about yourself all the time. And then, so I've gradually, and so that's something that the podcast has taught me. One, let people talk and try and just ask the right questions to get people to talk, make them feel comfortable, and then just you can pull stuff out of people. And sometimes you end up in a place that you didn't know how the hell you got there. But it's really cool. And it's by far my favorite thing about doing all this stuff is meeting people and chatting about stuff and talking about different.
Right. So our job tonight, we need to find something interesting. Got it, Andy?
How rude.
Well, I'll tell you what, on that note, why didn't you give us the garage rundown? Because that's always a good one to kick off with. What's in the garage currently for you?
What's in my garage? Oh, well, this is where the other side of my life comes in. So I have at home right now, I have an F40, as you do.
As you do.
I have an old yellow, it's a backdated 911 SC.
Yeah.
Backdated by Auto Farm. I don't know whether you've come across that.
Okay.
Yeah.
They did it about 15 years ago, and then this is its second iteration, and I bought it off the guy that made it look sort of how it did now.
Okay, so it had like it was done 15 years ago and then done again.
Yeah, so
to sort of bring it up.
Originally done as like a 73 RS.
Yeah.
Sort of. And then they removed the ducktail, and so it was white with stripes, and then it went yellow, so it's signal yellow now.
Yeah.
With uprated engine, so it's like 3.2. It's on. That's where I can't remember all of the specifics, but it's on like sport cams on Webers. It's like sort of 250 horsepower, something like that.
Yeah.
Stiffened up a little bit. Bilstein dampers. Decent sound system, different seats, just sort of messed with. Actually, someone that you had on the podcast, I've got a classic retrofit aircon system that just went in.
Oh, I do. Excellent. Yeah, that's Johnny from Classic Retrofit. That was a great podcast. I really geeked out with Johnny. It was good.
Yeah.
How do you find their kit? I'm always interested to know what it's like to live with.
Well, I can't tell you much about it because I ordered it last year.
Yeah.
And then at the very beginning of this year, I drove my car. I squashed a tire between my car and the garage door. And this was an absolute nightmare. So I just swapped the car back from like winters to summers.
Yeah. Or
summers to winters, one way around. And I sort of have this rule that never block the car from the garage. Like you don't put anything in. I feel like there's a good rule, but I forgot about this rule at this point in time. because I didn't have enough space for the tyres. So I just slotted them down the side of the car. And what happened is, as the car pulled back, it just slowly rolled one of the tyres. Just kept rolling it back. And then it got to the door frame where the garage door is. So that stuck out maybe 5 centimetres or something, which stopped the tyre. But then the front of the tyre, being rubber, slightly sticks, stuck to the bodywork. And as the car went back, it kept pulling the tyre. And it pulled the tyre, which I don't know what a size of a tyre is. I don't know. What is it? 30 inches or something?
Yeah.
Into probably half that. That was what it was squashed down to, horizontal, straight into the rear sort of kidney area of the car, which then punched in the rear kidney area of the car, bent everything, problemo. And
not good.
That is a really bad place to damage a 911.
Yeah.
So then car went back to Auto Farm to fix that stuff. At the same time, I was going to get the aircon installed. Corona happened. So I got the car back 2 weeks ago.
Oh, just in time for winter. Perfect.
But luckily, it was on its winter tyres. So it's on its winter tyres, so it's ready to go. But I haven't really tried out these little stuff.
The aircon, yeah. At least you'll have good demisting properties.
Yes, exactly.
So you drive that in the winter then, as well as the summer, obviously with winter tyres.
That car, I drive it through the winter, but I try. It depends on the conditions. Originally, I had it so it's got I put extra lights on it and stuff like that, and bonnet latches and things like that. Because I took it with it was actually some people I met on Gumball to Sweden in the winter.
Oh, was that one of these sort of ice rallies that you did?
Yeah. So it's sort of been called the Snow Tour.
Oh, yes, that's it, yeah.
But yeah, so we took that, me and a friend that I do some racing with, and I had forever looked at things like Tuthill, the ice driving stuff, and that's like the sickest fun ever.
Yeah, so want to do that.
Yeah. When everyone was going, I was like, you know what, why not just take the 911? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Right, okay, I mean, bad things could happen, but can't be that bad. And so we took it. I spoke to Tuthill actually about what modifications they make to their engines.
Yeah.
So for the cold, essentially, if you've got Webers rather than the sort of normal EFI, whatever that stuff is, you can't do that much. So you can put these sort of rain covers on the top, and then we ran a pipe from the heating pipe, an extra pipe from the heating, and sort of tucked it under the rain cover, so it got a bit more hot air. And that worked pretty well. We didn't have any problems other than one night we were driving somewhere in between hotels or whatever, and we'd sort of been driving it. You very quickly acclimatize to driving at what would be considered normal speeds in the UK on snow and ice. You just get used to it. You're like, 60 miles an hour, snow and ice on a road, no problem.
It's all about the winter tyres, isn't it? It just makes such a huge difference.
It's unbelievable. And the Swedish boys have always have studded tyres as well.
Yeah. Which
one of the guys had an RS6 that had 800 studs in each tyre, which is like, and they were all sort of like, I don't know, 5 centimeters or 4 centimeters or something like that. So him driving down the road, he was like, this is like driving on tarmac. Like I might as well be on a racetrack. If you're on ice, as soon as you then get onto tarmac, then your tyre is lifted off the floor. So it's actually really slippy. So we had a few situations where some of the guys had studs and they'd slam on the brakes on the road and you just get sparks like flying. And they don't slow down quite so much. But yes, I'm driving along this section of sort of motorway, back road, whatever, sort of 60-ish. And then I lift off and the car doesn't slow down. The throttle just started to stick. Like,
it got frozen up or something.
Starting to freeze up.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, no. This is not what we want. So I sort of
was it easy resolve with the toe under the accelerator pedal? Was it?
or
not
just
so
like
good?
smashing the brake pedal. And it just force it to slow down. But it was only started sticking a little bit, and that was when I realised that probably I just needed to slow down because it was just so cold. A couple of brake issues when your brakes get really, really, really cold and they don't work, or they get loads of snow in them and they don't work, and you're just pounding them coming up to a junction, just hoping that there's no one there.
It's reassuring.
It was wicked fun, and everyone else had really quite modern cars. We had like an AMG GT. Someone had an M6. That was an awful car, no traction whatsoever. The old 911 had so much grip, and you just felt so in control of it. As soon as we've done a few since, and I've done them in some different cars, and having a car sort of that age and that analog, you can feel everything. Whereas anything modern, we did one in Audi lent us an R8, and then for the most recent one, the Bentley lent us a Bentley Continental convertible V8. But your disconnect between your steering, you're then just pointing. You have no idea what the
and the car's trying to do all sorts of things to help you along the road, but in effect, it just
and in the snow
screws it. Yeah,
ABS in the snow is not the best of things. You kind of want it just to lock to some extent, or almost. Whereas occasionally I've had it with ABS in a car, whether it's either on like a super damp track or something, where the ABS just triggers like before you've even started pressing it. Almost around in snow, best thing you can do ever in any car.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree with that.
Preferably one that damage is not the end of the world.
Yeah, I've when I was in Colorado, and we had this hire car. It was like a Kia, I can't say it, Kia Sedona or something like that. Shit thing with shit tires on it, and it was great fun until we hit this big snowbank. And I took it back with half the side missing. It was absolutely screwed. Yeah.
You said, Sam, you said you touched on a bit of track stuff or racing. What's so you doing a bit of track work, or are you actually racing in a series, or what's that in reference?
That started maybe 5 years ago, something like that. I realised that I was only getting older, and I really loved the idea of doing some racing. So I signed up I had a look around to see what was out there. And I realized that I wanted to race something that seemed more serious than my road cars, or that I was getting to drive on very often. So I came across the Radicals, and I started off in the SR1 Cup. So this is like the Radical SR1 is like a 550 kilo, 190 horsepower sort of mini prototype. So like some downforce. And I did that for a year, which was sketchy as hell, because they run on a treaded sort of like a road tire type thing, with the idea of keeping costs down a little bit, so you're not on slicks and wets and stuff like that. But the tire was rock solid and didn't have a lot of tread. So when it rained, your car's right on the floor anyway, and then you just have pretty minimal grip. And then also the possibility of your car just getting picked up. And the racing the SR1, I had two big accidents, one each year that I'd sort of towards the end of each year that I was racing it. One was to do with, what was the first one? The first one was a massive shunt at Cadwell Park. I don't know whether have you been to Cadwell Park?
Yeah, I went to Cadwell last week actually for the first time.
Oh, nice!
We discussed it quite a bit last week actually on the podcast, because I've been there. Well, it's quite a few years ago, but what an amazing track that is!
Crazy little track, not a lot of runoff.
No.
So what?
Really narrow,
and it's so narrow. So what happened is it was torrential rain, and so we started under a safety car, and someone had put my car into reverse the previous day. Now, weirdly, these cars have reverse, but it's after talking to a lot of people that have run them for a long time, they're like, yeah, but you don't use it. I'm like, well, why didn't someone tell me not to use it? Like, oh, you should try it out. Anyway, someone puts it into reverse, which means it essentially, I think, runs the diff like backwards, basically.
Yeah. So you've got six. Haven't you got 6 reverse gears? I think
so,
in those.
Yeah.
Because it's got a high booster engine.
Yeah.
And basically, all you're doing is you're changing the diff rather than the gearbox.
Yes.
So yeah, in effect, the high booster hasn't got a reverse gear. So
apparently, what happens is when you do that, sometimes there's some pins in the diff that drop in and don't come out, and essentially they lock your diff. Like, that's it. Car ain't moving. You have to change it.
Yeah.
And they claim I was like, okay, cool. Well, obviously not cool. This is really not good. It's testing, and this was the first 5 minutes of the day. So they spend the rest of the day rebuilding the diff, and then they put it in at the end of the day. It's not working. They claim they sort it out overnight. Qualifying, I go out, the car like nukes itself. I think essentially there was something wrong with the way it had been put back together, and it would run for about 10 minutes and then just, that was it. Like, wouldn't move. And so I qualified at the back because I just didn't get to do any laps. And so started off, torrential rain. We do 1 lap behind the safety car and then off we go. And driving that car in those conditions is like someone taking a fire hydrant and literally shooting it in your face. That is literally what it's like. You cannot see a thing if there's a car in front of you. And Cadwell Park, and I didn't know because I've never driven there in the wet. And at this point, I didn't have any much wet experience at all. And there's a guy in front of me, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm going to do you on the start line. So I go around the left. Full beans. There's just spray in front of me. I'm like, okay. And then I start to think, hang on a minute. I can't actually see anything. So I lift off a little bit. And then I hit an almighty puddle. And what happens? The car got picked up, turned to the side, exits stage left. And then just near where the start line is, there's a gap, presumably so a marshal can get on or something, where there's a gap in the fence. And where the gap is, there's a tiny like divot. It must be like 10 centimeters high or something. Just a little mound. My car goes over that, takes off, goes up over the barrier, of which there's trees on the other side of the barrier, lands on the barrier, like some sort of 50-50 Tony Hawk skate grind, goes along the barrier, and then falls back onto the track, luckily the right way up. Jesus. At which point I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? I'm like, how am I still alive? And then there's a car spun in front of me, and he's looking at me. And just as I'm sort of like waking up, he looks at me and he's sort of like shaking his head, like waving, like sort of frantically. I'm like, what? And then bang, I get hit by another car from behind.
Oh.
And essentially about 5 cars had spun going across the start line because there was just too much water everywhere. And Cadwell Park, it all pulls on the left-hand side of the track, which if you've ever been there before in the rain, you might know this. If you've not, you would not know this. And why would someone design a track so there's literally rivers sitting there? I don't know. So yeah, about 5 cars got totaled. So that was the end of season 1. Rebuilt the car, did a bunch of racing season 2, and then we struggled with brake bias issues. Essentially, that car has not been developed very well, the little one, or hadn't at the time, and we could never get that car to the point where the fronts would lock before the rears, ever. And I had a massive moment at Brands Hatch, like turn 1, Paddock Hill Bend, whatever it's called. Hit the brakes, just like dab the brakes as you go over these like little bumps just before you sort of come to the corner, and the back just went. And I just went straight onto the inside wall at like 70.
Not ideal.
That was the end of the car. That was the end of that car, and also the end of a lot of confidence for me in a race car, because you come out of something like that, and I was pretty sure I hadn't done anything wrong. And you look back at the telemetry or whatever, and you're like, yeah, I didn't really do anything wrong. I didn't do anything obvious. I didn't slam on the brakes. I didn't think anything stupid. But it took a while before, another friend of mine who does a bunch of racing, to come and watch the video, and he was like, "Oh, it's brake bias," and you're like, "Okay, well, at least then I can start to process that whole situation of that's why." And if I ever get in another race car again, I know not to do that, or to make sure that's sorted out and whatever. So my solution to this, especially because we were racing, whenever it was wet, it was always super dicey because we were on these tires, and they Radical at the time wouldn't commit to allowing people to use wet tires in the wet, especially since it was a novice series. I think their main aim was keeping the cost down. But novices are not very good at driving in the wet, and I would rather buy a set of wet tires, or even just have a set of tires that are like half decent in the wet, so that my car doesn't go in a wall, because that's way more expensive than a set of tires.
That's very true. Yeah. So it's false economy, isn't it? Really?
Exactly. So I ultimately, what happened at the end of that season, probably about 6 months later, is I bought an SR3, which is the car at the category above. So it's faster with more downforce. And the reason is I went in to drive one, and I drove one in like kind of rubbish conditions, and it's just a much better race car.
More developed. Yeah.
It's just more developed, better platform, everything works better, more aero. You're on slicks and wets, which obviously there'll be a time when it rains and you're on slicks, that's a problem, but it's just a much friendlier car to drive. It's not quite as... An SR1 you can drive with a lot of slip angle. That was like I'm some sort of professional driver or something. I'm not. But like you can really like kind of hoon it around. Whereas the 3 you can do a little bit, but not so much. It's more about it's a much tighter sort of area you've got to play with.
More grip.
So
you've still got that, have you?
I've still got that, and then I do a bit of racing with that. But I did some racing. The cost from SR1 to SR3 was similar. The basic costs are pretty similar, but just tires. And that was a real shock at how much tires for a race weekend can be. Because
what do you reckon someone could spend in a season then on tires? Just give us because I always find it amazing the cost of running a race car.
I'll give you an example for a weekend, and then I guess we can sort of extrapolate that out. A set of tires was about £1,600, something like that.
Yeah.
And on a weekend, if it's dry all weekend, what lots of people do is they have an older set that they do for most of the testing and whatever, and then they'll put on a fresh set for qualifying, and then halfway through the way those weekends are structured is they do 2 sprint races and an endurance race. It's changed a little bit now, but that was back at the time. So you have 2 20-minute races and 1 45, and halfway through the 45 there's a mandatory pit stop, and halfway through the mandatory pit stop, or in the pit stop, people would swap the 2 left tires, because most UK tracks are clockwise.
Yeah.
So you're then 2.5 or two and a bit for a set of tires, and then if it rains, you've got a set of wets, which will last a few weekends. But if you're on a set of wets and it dries,
and they're ruined. You
can destroy them really, really quickly. So people spend $3,000. You could spend $3,500 a weekend on tires if you so chose. Obviously, you don't want to do that. You definitely.
How many track days have you done on the set of tires on the Cayman, Jay?
On ours?
Yeah.
Oh God, we clearly don't drive it very hard because I think we've done 3 sets in 4 years or something stupid. It's
That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Like road cars, the slicks are just not designed to last very long. Or at least the ones we run on the car. I've always been impressed with my GT3 how long Cup 2s last.
They do last really well, actually. I'll give you that.
You can rag a set of Cup 2s for like ages, even like pilots or something. It just lose that front end, like sort of turning a little bit, and if you're willing to deal with that and adjust accordingly, it lasts quite.
So did you do loads of sort of road car track days to get into it, or did you jump straight in and just get a load of tuition in a race car, or how did you kind of kick off? Because you don't just jump in a race series with with nothing.
Some people do.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
It's a weird question that sometimes people ask. It's like, how do you get into racing? It's like, well, buy a race car and go racing. That's how you get into racing. But I did a bunch of track days in various cars. Oh, you've got like a ghost behind you.
I like those deliveries.
Where's my cup of tea?
You sent a virtual one.
I did a bunch of track days in whatever I had at the time, a bunch of my GT3. And then...
Is this a GT3 you still got? Is this 997 RS?
Gen 2 RS.
Yeah.
Had for 6-7 years, something like that.
Cool.
Good choice.
I lucked out. It was like my first serious sports car, and it's one of the best. It went well. But yeah, so I did a bunch of track days. I did a bunch of sort of experience type things where you might go and drive a Caterham or something like that. And then went and did a test in the Radical. So you can quite often, if you pretend you're serious, you can call up someone and they'll let you have a go for like half an hour or something without really having to pay something. Sometimes they'll make you pay, but sometimes you can get it for free. And after driving the SR1, I sort of, it was a lot of fun, and I realized that it was a big step up just driving something that like that versus driving the road cars, and driving something like a small prototype is completely ruined road cars on track for me now. I have no desire ever. When I had an M2 for a bit, and I used to take that to Bedford every now and then and have a little hoon around, but just sort of kind of like a fun thing. Well, why else are you doing it if you're not enjoying it? But the difference between driving something like that and driving the Radical, a big one for me is the Radical. If it goes in the gravel, it doesn't really matter. Like, you just suck out the gravel, duct tape up a little crack in the fiber or whatever, and it's fine. Whereas paint on your car, like, I quite like paint on my car, so stay on it. And then you can drive like any car. If it's like a dedicated track car, it would be a similar sort of thing, I imagine. You're there to use it, and you probably push it more. You will push it more than a road car, and you can start to explore like your ability and the car's ability. Whereas if you really care about it, you've always got to drive 10%. If you're sensible, you've always got to drive a bit on the safe side.
Yeah, because you need to get home at the end of the day.
I did a couple of track days in my GT4, and that was a bit like that. You kind of back of your mind, it's like, it was a big number if it's a painful day if it goes wrong. It's like our little track came, and we probably got there's two of us in on it. It's probably owes us less than 20 grand between two of us. It's like, if something happens, it's not a big day. Like you said, you push on a bit more, and you can. It's there to do a job rather than having to look pretty.
Which Cayman's that?
So it's 987. So it's an early 987 Cayman, and we've just pulled everything out of it and put it on coilovers and just done a load of bits to it to make it pretty track focused. And it works really, really, really well. We've sort of gone flying past all sorts of other things at Porsche days and other days, and that's great fun when people are sort of going, well, how does that work?
There is no greater feeling on track than being in something that's kind of slow and going past stuff that's meant to be really fast. There's sort of thing that happens. The Radicals, it's not, because you're sort of cheating, because the Radical is actually faster, but not in a straight line than anything, but just around a lap. An SR3 is 2 seconds off a GT3 car.
Oh, okay.
But you can buy an SR3 for 45 grand. You've got to have slicks and whatever, but like the performance is just, that's the thing that blows my mind driving those cars. Is like the performance is just so much higher than any road fancy supercar or anything like that, and mainly just like G forces you can pull around corners. That is Maggots Beckett's in something that will do 2.5 G is a wicked feeling. But then sort of through all this racing, and the more I did some of the SR3 stuff, but I realized it was like it's really expensive. And all racing in any shape or form, even just taking your car to the track, is expensive. But I then had a go in a Citroen C1,
I remember that. That's just what I was going to ask you about,
Yeah.
actually.
So one of my friends was like, "Oh, I've been out in a Citroen C1. There's an endurance series. They put 150 cars on track. Do you want to go?"
I've looked at this. I've literally looked at all the details on this. They do it's like a 24-hour, isn't there?
Yeah.
They do on them as
So
well.
the first one we did, there's a team of 4 of us, 4 or 5 mates, and we did Spa 24 hours. And you've got 3 classes of car. You've got the sort of the UK spec C1s. You've got the Belgian ones, which are they've got like a spoiler and alloys and an exhaust. They like drive past you on the straights. And then you had 2 CVs, so literally 2 CVs. The 2
Right, okay.
could not keep up with a safety car. Safety cars driving like 50 kilometers an hour, 60 kilometers an hour, something like that, and a TCB cannot keep up with a safety car, or it definitely can't catch up with a safety car.
Yeah.
They have these sort of prototype 2CV things, which are, so you see them, stories about them every now and then, where someone's taken a 2CV and then developed it and done literally whatever the hell they like, put on some crazy aero kit, and so those are like the Le Mans prototypes of the road. And they will just like blitz past you on the straight, but they're not too much faster in the corners. So you've got these 3 4 classes of car. So
it's all Citroens, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
all Citroens, and you're always overtaking or being overtaken or overtaking people and dealing with traffic. And Spa, obviously, it rains pretty much all of the time, or at least when it's inconvenient, that's when it will rain. And we went and did this weekend, and we came 12th. Well, no, did we came 12th? 12th or 8th? I can't remember. Something like that. Which was out of like 50, and we were like, "Oh, that was pretty easy. Like, that was good fun. We should do that again." And then the next time we went to Silverstone, we didn't finish, and we went to Spa again. We didn't finish. And we're like, hang on a minute. I think we were quite lucky the first year. But it's just the most fun. And I think for each person, it probably cost £1,500 each or something.
Oh, that's good. That's pretty good value, isn't it, for a race weekend?
It's really good value, and you're on proper tracks, aren't you? You're doing this proper racing.
And that's with them getting through like 80 tyres or something.
Yeah.
Is that still running, or is that finished now?
Oh, it still runs. Is it? This is a UK Everett series.
At Cadwell last week, there was one of those C1 race cars there, and they were going around all day. And we kind of figured out in the end, they were running around the track with the pedal just pinned. It didn't matter if they're going down the straight or around a corner; they were just flat out the whole day, and they didn't stop. It just went round and round and round and round and round, and that's all they did all day.
Yeah,
it was brilliant.
Pretty much flat out, and then just different amounts of lock depending on if you're going around the corner or not.
Yeah. Have either of you seen Bad Obsession Motorsport, Project Binky?
I have. I discovered it about 3 months ago. Got someone, and I've started at the beginning. And I'm on like episode.
Oh, excellent!
Something. So they're building one, aren't they?
Yeah, they started off building. Well, I'm sure they've done loads of stuff in the past, but their Project Binky is this little old Rover Mini that's got Celica GT4 running gear, and they are obsessed with everything, making brackets everywhere, and it's just an amazing
templates
thing that they've done. Yeah, just nuts. You need to see it, Jay. But yeah, it's called Bad Obsession Motorsport. But they've just entered. I'm just trying to see what it's called. It's called the City Car Cup.
Okay.
So this is Toyota Aygos, Citroen C1s, and must be the Peugeot 106. I guess it is. Yeah. I don't know what it's called. But yeah, I checked that out on YouTube because they've just done. I think it's like a 6-part series of actually building the car and testing it, and maybe on the first track use. Looks absolutely fantastic, and must be similar to that C1 in sort of cost.
Yeah, there's that,
and that's probably what you saw.
Yes. So I saw that they were building something like that, because if you look at those sorts of things, there's the Citroen C1s, the Ford KAs, the City Car one. I'm sure there's another one. And that's about the cheapest racing you can do. And
probably the most competitive as well, because
I had I've spoken to so many people, and when you're there at let's say at Spa or something, and you look at the grid, you're like, that's a GT3 driver. That's a GT3 driver. That's a works driver. You get serious people come in to do this, and a lot of people come together to do it for fun, and everyone's whatever. But like everyone takes it quite seriously, which you sort of need to. But everyone, it's just wicked fun, and doing that for the price that it costs, and more important, and for the time in the car that you get. So Citroen C1 banging around Spa, if it's wet, you can do 3 hours on a tank of fuel. No pit stops, just 3 hours. And then
pedal to the metal.
And you can double stint the tires. And it's like you do that and you come back and you know that every single lap of Spa, you've either had to overtake 8 cars or something, and you'll have someone trying to overtake you, and you might be battling with someone, 4 abreast up Eau Rouge and things like that. And you come out of that and go like, okay, well, I could go radical racing, but there's only like 15, 20 cars on the grid, and it's all a bit more serious, and it costs a lot more money. So
you don't get as much racing,
and you don't get anywhere near as much racing. So I heavily recommend it. And I had the more I talk to professional racing drivers, they're always like, I just want to do what's the best racing. If they're not being paid or whatever, like whether it's 5 or something like that. I had Darren Turner was on the podcast. I've just recorded the podcast with him, and I was telling him about the C1s. He's like, I want to do that. And that sounds like wicked fun. Like that's what racing is all about. Like people being in similar cars and lots of you, and you're separated. Like a lap of Spa in a Citroen C1, I don't know, it takes like 3 minutes.
3 hours.
3 minutes 37, something like that is a pretty fast C1 lap, which like, and you're fighting, the top cars are separated by, like a second or something. Over a 3 minute 37 lap.
That's awesome.
That's brilliant. So the Radical's up for sale then, is it?
It's not up for sale, but every now and then I go and drive it and I do a test day. I will do a bit of racing in it because it's just different. It's a different kettle of fish, and I will race that car a bit more when I'm fast enough in it.
Okay.
But if I can go out and set a lap time within a second of pole, I think that's probably where I'm aiming to get to. Then I will race it. Up until that point, if you can't do the lap time, you're never going to be up the top. So you might as well get your driving up to the point. And then driving something like that, if I ever got the chance to drive a Formula car or a LMP3 or something like that, at least you've got experience of something with downforce, and so you can actually push these cars. And then you get back in a road car and they're just like, it's so easy to drive. As long as it's not something mad like a GT2 RS.
We're talking about silly stuff with downforce. I mean, we sort of skirted over it at the beginning, but obviously you said you've got an F40 in the garage.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody has an F40 in the garage. Not everyone can find one, let alone manage to buy one. How on earth did that come about? What happened? What's the story?
So alongside all of this other stuff, my family had a very successful retail business up in sort of north of, all over the UK. A company called Lithiums. May have come across it, may not. And that got...
I remember going there as a kid.
Yeah. I remember when I was about 10 or something, I went on a little school trip somewhere and someone said like, oh, Sam Moores. Yeah. I went to like John Moores University, and at this point in time I didn't even know there was a university. I was like, what the hell? He's like, did you know that? I was like, no. Apparently that's quite cool. But no, so that business got finally sold 2003, 4, something like that. And that allows me to have nice things, really. And 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 that has led to an F40 at one point in time, which was a poster car for me, and also at the time reasonably considered a good investment, I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been a better investment if it was red, but it's not.
No, I think it looks better in blue.
I think it's wicked in blue, but
yeah. I think I read somewhere that it was it a Liberty Walk?
It was
car. At
so
point, yeah.
You'd Google Liberty Walk F40. That's the one that's now F40 blue, or the blue one that's around. The guy that bought it originally, Kato-san, who owns Liberty Walk, he bought two, and he bought one. One he kept red and relatively stock, and then one he turned into this Liberty Walk car. So it was like an LM body kit. It was sort of like slammed, had like some pretty cool wheels on it, had big diffuser and stuff, had a big subwoofer in the front and all these sorts of things.
That's how you bought it?
That's how I bought it, yeah. And I kind of wish I'd driven it around a little bit like that for a bit, or at least kept the wheels. But no, the deal I sort of did on buying it, because it was in this state when no one really wanted it, I got a reasonable deal.
Was it white at that time?
It was white, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just having a look.
So then I had it sent back to a company called Zanassi, they're basically the sort of Ferrari body shop that's not Ferrari but is Ferrari. They've worked on Ferraris forever. And if you have let's say you've got a LaFerrari Aperta, which came in 5 colors, I'm sure the people that spent €2.5 million on that were very happy about that. 5 colors, 5 of which were awful. Some of those cars are not the same color, and they went straight from Ferrari. They were painted red or whatever to get them off the production line. They go straight to this company called Zanassi, and Zanassi has painted them. So they took my car. We found some original unpainted panels, or some original panels, and made it blue. Gave it a sort of once over, made it all look shiny and sparkling. Put it back to original spec, and that is that car, which is quite something to drive.
Yeah.
Does it see much sort of light of day, or is it squirreled away most of the time? Or?
Not a lot. At the moment, I've never really had much parking at home, ever. I've had one garage space for the last 8 years, and in that, luckily, the cars I've owned have always slightly been dictated by the garage, because they have to fit in the garage, and the garage is quite narrow, and they all of them fit in. But I've just moved house, and I now have a 2-car garage, so I have space, a little bit more space. So the Ferrari is here for a little bit, whilst so the yellow 911 has been away for 9 months.
Yeah,
the GT3 has been away for 3 months. I'm having the rear ceramics refurbed, except they got sent to a company in Germany. Corona happened, the factory shut, and then the company went into administration.
Oh, shit.
They have your discs in and amongst
They have my discs, but luckily I sent them, I got it done through someone. So JZM of being the people that were sorting it out.
Yeah.
So they are responsible for my discs, and they are making sure I'm getting some discs back. Because that would be worse, wouldn't it? If you sent off your rear discs and then you just got no discs whatsoever. But yeah, so that will come back at some point in time. So I have that car's away. So the Ferrari's been at home for a bit, but it's got straight pipes, which for the right road, right time is unbelievable. 5 a.m. in central London, right time. Quite aware of how it's. I think it's like 125 decibels or something like that.
Yeah,
it's the sort of car you can hear about 3 roundabouts away.
Have you been pulled at all for noise?
Not for noise. I've been pulled.
Oh, really?
No, actually, have I? I'm trying to think. I've been pulled over. Yeah, once for noise, and I was annoyed because the car has a valid MOT. It is old enough that it doesn't need cats.
Yeah.
And it may have pipes on them that say for competition use only. But I got pulled over by the police for making a lot of noise, and I was doing about a quarter throttle at like 30 miles an hour. I was like, didn't rev it, nothing. I was just like bombing along, and they pulled me over, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Blah 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 blah. You know, you're like, oh, it's just a loud car. Like, it's just a loud car. But they didn't. It doesn't. That car doesn't have a front plate on, and I sort of, if I used it all the time, I would put some sort of front plate on it. But it gets used not that often, so I figured it looks much better without. But I've been pulled over twice in that car, and neither time did they mention the front plate. So,
oh really?
Weird.
I've got a magnetic mount on the front of mine.
Oh right.
So you can, when I'm doing a long journey, I'll put it on. But if I'm maybe going just around around the corner to somewhere, show or something,
private road
take it
or
off.
something.
Yeah.
A magnetic mount, is the plate magnetic, or has it got a stuck on?
Yeah, I've made a mount that's got some little pillars that go back and mount on the grille, and it's just got some magnetic cups. So you literally just go up to it and tink, and there's the plate on the car, and you can take it off in seconds. Yeah, I'll send you the link to the little thing that I made.
No, that sounds pretty cool. Because occasionally you see someone, it might have been not so much nowadays, but they got to France. Like, oh, I need a GB sticker, and I'll have one of those magnetic stickers, and they just go,
into
the.
That's not going to work on the bodywork of a Ferrari.
No,
F40.
it wouldn't. But I just look at that and go, like, you've just destroyed that paint.
Yeah.
So then the Ferrari came along. So I had a Boxster. That was my first sports car. I had an early 981 when that was coming out. Went and test drove a bunch of other stuff, like I think an Audi TT-RS at the time. Oh no, I wanted to drive an Audi TT-RS, and they wouldn't let me. They didn't believe I was going to buy it, so they wouldn't. Also, I went to drive at the time. What was it? A Z435 IS, which was like the big engine in the Z4. But apparently there was like none of them in the UK. I think there's like 8 or something. They also didn't peer. I don't think they thought I was that serious either, because but it could just be that there were none of those cars around, so they couldn't drive that. Yeah. But I went to Porsche and they let me drive a Cayman and a Boxster 987s. Loved the Cayman straight away. Loved it. But then ordered a 981. So I had that for 2 years, and then I got my GT3. And then
I was thinking that you've stuck with those cars, those sort of more analog cars. When you've been around Smee and whoever else, that sort of gang, and they're all into their latest and greatest, and you've kind of kept away from all of that.
Yeah.
Is that a conscious decision, or
it's definitely a conscious decision to have the cars that I have? And I think someone like Tim, his car purchase is less so now, but are mainly focused around YouTube and the business of YouTube. But he does buy cars he wants, but there is an angle of I think he recently bought an SLS Black Series, which is a car he's wanted for like 8 years, but never bought, because you might, there's a better story and a video to be made on a 650S or something at the time. So that sort of led those decisions. But for me, it was, I had the Boxster, did a bunch of road trips in it, loved it, was around people in other cars, and the Porsche just seemed to sort of keep going. Like there weren't really any problems, and it seemed to do quite well. And then I got the GT3, which was quite a big leap at the time. And then in the first 3 days, I went and did a track day at Goodwood in it. And I hadn't done many track days at that point in time, and I got a bit of a fright, I think. And then I've sort of grown with that car and like my driving ability, and I'm now quite comfortable like pushing that car quite hard. And then during this time, my friends have had different cars, and I've got to experience with what I do, I get to experience loads of cars quite often.
Yeah.
And I found with the paddle stuff, it's kind of fun, but it's fun for about half a second, or like 5 minutes. And then you're like, yeah, but manual's just more fun. And I get it for like my daily is an automatic. I get it for that sort of thing. But if you've got one car and it's meant to be fun and involving, the faster game, I think that was something I realized quite early on. Playing the I need a faster car game, it never ends. And even like ever, the people I know that have bought a GTR and then they do the 750 horsepower conversion and then they do the 1200 horsepower conversion and then they do the 1500 horsepower. Like it's just a bit like 911 Turbo has been a classic one for this. Like it's you drive it, and you're like, that's incredibly impressive, but then it doesn't have, and the 992 might do, but the other ones for me, they never had that, the rest of it. So like GT3, and for me having a bypass pipe on the back completely transforms that car. That and having the valves open all the time. The ability to shut and open the valves, because that time when they're shut and then they're opening, you end up driving like an absolute bellend. You're driving around town or something, you just want to hear the exhaust, so you then have to put your foot like flat so then it opens, and then as soon as you lift off it shuts. Whereas if you have it open on, let's say, the GT3, you get all of these amazing noises when you lift off, like organic pops and bangs, not artificial pops and bangs, and like all those engine notes. And just, I don't know, just driving that car a lot. Every time I drive something else, like I get going like a 458 or something like that, I'd come back and go, yeah, like it's nice. And it's, lots of those cars, they feel, they feel more expensive and they feel more special in terms of, you get in a McLaren, like it's an amazing interior, or a Ferrari, modern Ferrari, carbon everywhere and all this sort of stuff. But I kept coming back. This flat six that just absolutely screams and like gets into you. And then we're doing road trips and the Porsche just works, never breaks down.
Have you, over those years, have you been close to selling and like the F40 or the RS?
Yeah.
And then
I think
I've gone back on that decision.
Yeah, the GT3 has been the one that I keep looking at and going, I should sell it. Because I don't drive it very much. Part of the nature of of only being able to have one car at home, that would either be the old 911 or the GT3. And half the time now, if I'm going somewhere for a weekend away or something like that, it's with my other half and got to put luggage in the car. And if we're going to like a wedding or something like that, the old 911s, that's a way cooler car to go to a wedding in. And we've had some really good adventures in that car. The GT3 is just a bit more difficult to use because of the cage. So like, you just want to be able to have two airline style bags with wheels or whatever. And in a 997, you can put one in the front. If you've got a cage,
one on your
and the other one, exactly. If you've got a cage, you just can't use it. And that I'd say is probably the number one reason I don't drive it that much anymore. And I'm really hoping, I can't wait for it to come back. And I've said to myself, I looked at doing something like what you guys have done and get like maybe a Cayman or something and just like track prep it pretty much and just go and smash a bunch of tracks. And then I looked at what that might cost. I was like, well, okay, I could just spend that on insurance on the GT3. Not but like less. I'll just spend less, but some of it on insurance and just go and use that car, create a bunch of memories, travel around Europe, go to the Nürburgring, spend a couple of weeks there or whatever, go to Spa, do a bunch of UK tracks and just really, really use it. And if at the end of all that, I'm still like, oh, I don't love it anymore, or I don't use it, or I'd like to swap it for something else, then I swap it for something else. But at the moment, it doesn't get much use, and I feel it's just an asset that I could translate that into something else. However, it was my first proper sports supercar type thing, and I've got amazing memories with it, and I still think it's genuinely an amazing car, which is I think it's a difficult one when you think it's amazing but you don't use it.
Bit unloved.
Yeah. Like
what would be what's on the list in terms of next car, future car that has caught your eye? Not necessarily as a replacement, but just as, what's out there at the moment you think, actually, that's a good car?
For replacement for GT3, I tried quite hard, but didn't get. I wanted a 991.2 GT3. Yeah. And I've driven quite a few now, and I don't think it doesn't deliver the same experience on a road. Like it's nowhere near the feel, like that feedback you get from that 997, whether it's the steering or just the way it goes down a road. The Gen 2 991 and the Gen 1 there's so much of a slicker, smoother, just like everything's dialed back by about 10%. Like it's much more capable, but you feel less stuff. Whereas the RS is like hunting camera and trying to kind of kill you a little bit the entire time, which is more fun. But I thought maybe at
lower speed.
If I'd managed to get a slot, ultimately I would have got. I'm sure I would have ordered a touring, and I would have run that side by side for a little bit with the GT3 and then made a decision. And I keep looking at those going, I still would like a manual 991.2. But it's sort of too similar. Because I feel like a lot of the only things I had a problem with the 997, so if you said, could you change anything? I would have given it more low-end grunt. So if you're doing like a sort of Alpine-y type road trip, the gearing on that car, either you're right at the top of first, like ding, 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 ding on the rev limiter as you come out of a hairpin, or you're bogging down in second, or you're massively committed, which not really where you want to be. So I wanted a bit more low down torque if I could have. I got to drive a 4-litre at one point in time at Silverstone. That was 997 4-litre. That was the engine in that is just something else. Like it is that step. But the
you've driven one, haven't you, Joe?
Yeah, well, a friend of ours very kindly let me have a play with one, and we were up near the Lake District in the sort of Yorkshire moors, whatever it was, and we found these amazing deserted roads, and sort of threw me the keys and said, go and have a play, and it was incredible bit of kit. Really
cool. So I wish it had a little bit more low down torque, but as time goes on, as I become a better driver, I'm more okay with that situation, just like drive faster or just deal with it or whatever. I wish the speaker system was better. It's a bit rubbish. All of these things are things you can change, I guess. And I wish it didn't have a cage. Which and I've used the cage quite a bit on track, and it's bloody great. But just for my usage, I know if it didn't have a cage, I would use it more often. So all of those sorts of things got solved in the next car, like better sound system, an engine with way more low down torque. And
sounds like a touring's the car for you then, isn't it?
It does. Apart from the fact I think it's probably a bit numb. If you're used to that experience, I think it would be a great car. I think it is a great car. But the next one for me is probably going to be something with a V12.
Oh, okay.
And the next one, because when you get to the point where you're like, I've got a bunch of cars, I should probably start like dialing them into some sort of niche. I realized at one point in time, all my cars were quite similar, like all quite aggressive drivers' cars, of which I have 4. Like, what is the point? If you can literally walk in the garage and go, I could take any of these, and they do the same thing, or equally, they would all be just as bad at what I'm doing. So that's what changed when I got rid of my M2 and I have an S4 Avant, which is great. This is just a great like daily. Well, it's just a great car. But none of the cars I've got at the moment are very good GT. The old 911 is it's kind of fun, but it's not very modern in any way, shape, or form. And you're a bit committed a little bit, but great thing. So I figured, well, I should have something. should probably get rid of the GT3 RS. That would be the sensible one to go because I don't use it on track as much because I have the race car and I'm just don't want to damage it or whatever. So then replace it with a GT car. So that is possibly the idea. I don't know what will happen in the end, but yeah, I want an F12. That is
okay.
I've wanted a V12 for a long time, and I've wanted an F12 for a reasonable amount of time. And I'm like, I know I can use it. Like I would use it quite a lot. Just like GT rolls, if you're going away for the weekend, you can chuck the luggage in it, all that sort of stuff. And it's a naturally aspirated V12. Does have paddles, but it's all right.
So you'd take the paddles and over the V12 then?
Yeah, and you could go, okay, what else? You could do like a DBS, something like that. Another car I always thought is really, really cool. Then you could still have a manual in that, which would be, I do like a DBS. I also like V12 Vantage, really cool car. I mean, there's a lot.
They look mad value now, don't they? They've just hit that like
amazing
started
price
going
up
point
again, I think.
Have they? Okay.
I think they sort of bottomed out at about 70. Obviously mileage dependent. And then they sort of went up for a bit. I had a friend's dad buying a car at one point in time, and he was looking at getting a new Cayman or something like that. And we're like, okay, but for the same amount of money, you can get a V12 Vantage. And he got the V12 Vantage, and it cost him nothing to run for the 3 years or so he had it, because it basically stayed the same value. Possibly, I think it went up a little bit. Whereas if you bought a new Cayman,
you lose half of
$15,000 the drain year one.
That's crazy world.
So what's the plans for next year then? Is it lots more podcasts or more YouTube or more road trips or all of the above?
Sort of all of the above. I'm going to do a lot more. I say I have a lot more podcasts. I can't do many more podcasts. I think one a week is like a reasonable amount at the moment without having someone else editing. Especially with doing video and stuff as well, and just trying to do all that seems to be a reasonable amount of logistics. So I'll try and do one a week starting. I'm going to have a break, I think, at end of November till beginning of February. And then I'll start up and it'll be one a week, and I did think I might trim it down a little bit and just aim for like mega guests. Like maybe do like 30 rather than 50, 60 or something.
Yeah.
And just pitch it and just try and pull together like the coolest guests you can, sort of thing. But then equally, I do like talking to all of these random people that do everything, whether it's, and someone might not have heard of them. And I'm like, yeah, but you might have heard of them at some point in time. Like,
that's right. Yeah. And you get the different story, don't you?
Exactly. And I know when I started off, and I think you probably find this, you start your podcast, you're like, okay, who have I got access to? Who are my friends? Who's around? Who'll do it? Who am I not pissed off too much that might come on the podcast? And then, so initially I had a lot of YouTube type people.
Yeah.
And then I got some sort of feedback on that, being like, it's always YouTubers. They're not that interesting. It's same. Okay, fine. But I'm working with what I've got here, and then you start pushing out and approaching more people and racking your brain, and you come across more people. And there's people I've wanted to do a podcast with, and we've been trying to do a podcast with for ages. And I think specifically for me, it revolves around being able to drive a car. If I can find someone that I can line up a podcast with that lets me drive a car, that's the best. So like,
that's not bad. Yeah.
GTO engineering recently, prime example.
Oh yes, yeah.
Here's the keys to a 250 short wheelbase. I will. Yes, thank you very much.
That's a good deal.
Alcoholics, they're one I've been trying to do. We've almost a year now. But that's a car I really want to drive. And then there's a whole bunch, and you sort of think, oh, I'm running out of people, and then you do a brainstorm and you realize,
you won't run out.
That actually it almost keeps going and going and going, and it's just it's convincing people to come on it. That's tough. and then it's getting people your schedules together. Zoom makes that a lot easier. But yeah, it's fun. So anyway, yeah, probably more podcasts. I'm going to do I've got some other ideas of some photography stuff I'd like to do. I'd like to do a few more road trips. I've got some ideas of a bunch of series that I want to do. And then there'll be YouTube videos every now and then. If I go and visit someone that lets me drive a car, or if someone's literally going to let me drive something cool, the manufacturer wants me to invite somewhere, I will take those handouts.
Excellent.
Let me drive a 992 turbo for a week. I will happily do that.
Advertisement is there for you.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. More of the same. It's difficult trying to plan things at the moment.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, very much so. You approached us to come onto our podcast.
Did
how did you find us?
That's a good question. Podcast charts.
Oh, really?
I think it must have been. Yeah, it was a lot earlier in the year, a long time ago. And I know at the time you kept popping up. Like I kept seeing your name up there, and I was like, "Oh, these guys have got a Porsche podcast. Let's see what they're at." And then I was like, "Okay, I should probably try and get on some other people's podcasts so I can harvest some of their audience." I thought I'd message you guys and see if you wanted to come and chat about something.
Excellent. Good. Full of honesty there. That's the good thing.
Having the honest conversations, I think that's my favorite thing about podcasts. If someone wants to come on my podcast and doesn't want to be honest, I don't want them on the podcast. And you can have, I've had people now from the bottom all the way to the top of running big companies and stuff. And if you get someone comfortable and they seem like you've got a good conversation, you ask half decent questions or half reasonable questions, you're going to get real answers. And you can ask people things that probably people wouldn't necessarily ask them. And that's just great because you get to like see the human side of some of these people.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Well, I think we've learned lots about you today that I didn't know. Because you've been on the other side asking the questions, so it's been really good to go through your background and find out who Sam Moores is. So that's been good.
That's been really good.
I've been trying to work out how to do it because I knew at some point I thought about getting someone to interview me on my podcast, and I might do that at some point in time. But I think it's good for people to, well, at least like they're like you get the odd comment like, "Who the hell's this guy?" I'm like, oh, I just am who I am. That's it. Like nothing more, nothing less.
Excellent.
No, I think we're in a similar sort of boat that when we kicked off the podcast, we didn't. Our expectations were relatively low in terms of how many people might listen to it or what people might find interesting, what they're not, and we obviously had a really good reception to ours, and it's still almost quite humbling that so many people are so supportive and interested,
so
which is
cool, isn't it?
Quite cool. Yeah, really cool. And we've talked to all sorts of people and it's been really good.
And people, I presume you've had people reach out and say, thanks for making a podcast and stuff like that.
Yeah, we get some really lovely feedback and it's, it makes it all kind of worthwhile.
It really does. Because it's a lot of effort. There's a lot of effort for everyone to do these things. And when you get someone go out of their way, and with a podcast, they really do have to go out of their way to touch. It's not just like straight away easy.
There's a little bit of a convoluted feedback route, isn't there? Where if something like YouTube, you've got the comment section there. You don't get that interaction so much with the listener audience. Yeah. So when somebody subscribes to you as a Patreon or gives you a good bit of feedback on podcast on Apple Podcasts, that means a lot.
It does. So everyone should leave these guys a rating and review on iTunes. 5 stars and a nice review. Helps them with their iTunes ranking and helps get sponsors further down the line. There you
go. Very good. So while we're doing that sort of side of things, what is your podcast called for the listeners if they don't know already?
At the moment, right now, it's called Car Chat. At some point in time, it might change, but it's called Car Chat. And if you search Car Chat, it should come up there. And my name's Sam Moores.
And YouTube channel?
YouTube, if you search Sam Moores, you'll find my Instagram, probably the YouTube channel, Car Chat. There's a Car Chat podcast YouTube channel. So all of mine are audio and video.
Right.
I try not to tailor them too much to the video side, because sometimes you have video podcasts where stuff is clearly going on in the video that it doesn't make sense when you're listening. But yeah, so that's their Car Chat podcast, blah, 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 all that stuff. Yada, yada, yada. Find it.
Good.
Up to you.
One thing that we do with all of our guests, and I think you've got a similar thing, is we've got 10 questions, but it's a quick fire round where I think yours is a little bit more detailed. Have you got the list there, Joe? Or?
I can retrieve it shortly. Yeah, indeed.
No, I've got it up here. I can go.
Okay, in that case, I'll let you take the reins.
Joe's got a little spiel that he says normally, which is if it takes too long to answer the question, it's not the right answer. Is that the right spiel that you normally?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Isn't it? So yeah, quick fire is the order of the day. Okay, so first question: air or water? These are all Porsche related.
I was about to say, okay, that's tricky. No.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, water.
Oh, I thought you'd gone air with the ill backdate there.
Yeah, but I agree as well.
What's your favourite Porsche model?
73 RSR, maybe. That's a difficult question.
Okay, favourite Porsche colour?
Aqua blue.
Who is your ultimate Porsche icon?
Ooh. Ultimate Porsche icon.
Yeah, I've had lots of answers to it, different answers. It's a good question.
That is a difficult question.
Who do you think of when you think Porsche?
Other than Ferdinand Porsche. I don't know. Immediately I think of, and then I can't even remember who the hell drives the damn car. When I think of cool Porsche people, I think of the race drivers that drive the GT3R at the Nürburgring. But I'm trying to think who drives that car. Oh, this is a tricky question. I don't think I have a. Oh no! Okay, Andreas Pruninger.
Good answer. We've had that on
choice.
Okay, favourite track
that I've driven? I guess that's a reasonable one. Spa.
Yeah. Okay. To Fuchs or not to Fuchs?
Fuchs.
As in the wheel.
Fuchs. Every time. On old cars. Not on new cars.
Yeah. Stock or hot rod?
Hot rod.
Narrow or wide body?
Oof. Narrow.
Cars and coffee or a track day?
Track day.
And do you go back seats in a 911? Yes or no?
Yes. Maybe.
No cage.
No cage, back seats.
Yeah.
Probably no seats. But yeah, I'd have back seats. More people can use it.
Indeed. Get the little ones in there, right?
Exactly. Not like that, but yeah.
Good set of answers. That's been really, really great. I'd like to say thank you and appreciate your time.
Oh,
thank you very much, Sam. It's been awesome to get you on.
So I think that was pretty interesting, don't you think?
Definitely. I really enjoyed the bits about the F40, finding out it's not checkered past, but interesting past, I'd say.
Yeah, most of them are sort of been in kid gloves and in a box somewhere, and that one's obviously done the rounds in a good way and been sort of fettled with, which is quite cool.
Yeah, while we were talking, I had a look at because it was the Liberty Walk Ferrari for a while. And I actually found out that it's been in Grand Theft Auto 5.
There you go.
Yeah, famous car. I'm sure there's lots of kids around. Well, not just kids, are there? Grown men that have driven that around the streets of Miami and various places.
I think it's funny though, isn't it? How a car goes from being like the pinnacle of cars to own in its stock form. Someone then obviously turns it into that Liberty Walk car, which was iconic for different reasons. And then Sam's got hold of it and put it all back to a stock car.
Pretty nuts.
And amazingly, not a red one either, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, brave choices.
Which is it's normally the go-to, so that was quite interesting too. I really enjoyed some of the track stuff. I think that's and the whole entry level, racing. That was really good to hear.
Stuff.
I mean, it's mega money. You talk to anybody on any level, and just actual racing is so expensive. And, things like that C1 racing. I bet that's for not a huge amount of money. I think we should have.
I think you're probably thinking sort of sub 10 grand a year to do that, maybe.
Oh no, less. It's less. I mean,
less. Maybe 10 grand to start off for the first year, maybe.
I tell you what,
buying the car and setting it up.
You'd be really surprised. I think we looked at it, and I think it's about 5 grand to buy your car and to buy the series kit. It was about 5 grand, and then to actually run the car per race was peanuts. It was such good value, and I just think that's such a good way of getting into a proper series. Imagine being on a big tracks with 50 odd cars.
It would be fucking mayhem. Absolute mayhem.
Absolutely bonkers. So I think that's quality. I think that's brilliant. And and you obviously go back to the Porsche stuff. In fact, he's got a GT3 RS that he does use, has tracked it, will track it some more. I think that's a good shout as well. Yeah,
and interesting that he's a fairly young guy, really. Well, he is compared to my old man status, and he's kept to the sort of analog kind of experiences, and not followed all of the YouTube's people that he knows into all the crazy McLarens and Ferraris and all that sort of stuff. It's really quite interesting.
It's almost a bit of an eclectic mix, isn't it? When you've got some real extremes in there. An F40 at one end of the spectrum. There's sort of the proper racing cars at the other, and an old backdate thrown in for, which actually sounds like it gets used quite a lot, which is pretty cool in itself.
Yeah, respect. It was cool. So, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, really, really good. And and obviously, the other obviously he's a fellow podcaster, which is always interesting. So some of the podcast chat was, which I think probably happened off air in the end. But I think chatting podcast was actually quite interesting for us personally, because it's a similar sort of journey. I think you kicked it off at a similar sort of time, and just picking up on that same sort of vibe where people are actually really enjoying the podcast thing and supporting it, which is obviously lovely as well.
Definitely. I'd implore anybody to go and take a look at Sam's stuff. Really enjoyed listening to some of his podcasts.
Definitely.
I've listened to quite a few now.
And cool. So we should probably wrap up with the weekly handout and plug for the old
Patreon.
I'm glad you remember.
Yes. Yeah, we got another Patreon subscriber has joined us.
Fabulous.
I'm afraid all I know is his name is Doug. I don't know any more.
Well, thank you, Doug.
Yes, thank you very much, Doug. Really appreciate your kind contribution.
We seem to be regularly clocking up the support there, which is it's really, really nice, and it's a direct way of people kind of giving something a little bit back, which it makes it all worth the effort, I think.
It is, and again, it's always the morale. A huge morale boost, not just sort of money coming in the door. It's it really sort of gives you some sort of feels appreciated.
Yes, definitely. And I think in our plan is obviously what we're going to start feeding back to our Patreon members, which I think will be there's some things in the pipeline, we'll put it that way, that if people are subbed up and doing their bit, then we're definitely going to start giving some things back. So it's worth the sign up, I think.
We've got a cool treat coming up, actually. But let's discuss that and get that sorted. I think it's going to be good for the
indeed. So it's definitely a bit of a work in progress, but Christmas is coming, put it that way.
Good. Cool. All right then, let's sign off.
Indeed. Catch you soon.
Good to see you. Cheers. Bye.